Welcome to the A.L.L podcast.
We're the Academy of Logic and Light. I'm Meagan.
I'm Kat.
I'm Julie. We are an ethical community education platform that provides a safe space for people to practice their spirituality without indoctrination.
Welcome, everyone, for another episode of the A.L.L podcast. Today, myself, Meagan, Kat, other side, and Julie are here, and we're joined with by Emilie Davis, who we're so excited to get this opportunity to have you, to be able to do this interview and get a podcast put together. But I'm also so excited that you're going to be teaching with us. But Emilie, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit to the audience? Let them know what you do and a little bit of your background.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. Like Meagan said, my name is Emilie Davis. I am a holistic nutritionist that specializes in gut health. And I've been in practice for about 6 years, really focusing on gut health for about 4. And I'm excited to be here and to talk a little bit more about that.
Awesome. Emilie, I love so much focus on gut health because I feel like so often, I just love the phrase like trust your gut, right? Is something that so many people are told. And, I feel like in order to really find the trust in your gut, like you got to help take care of it. I'd love to hear more about kind of the way that our gut is connected to, our system and the kind of influence it can have in those ways.
It's a really big topic, honestly, right? And it's a field that we're constantly learning more about. I feel like every day. So what I mean by that is, we learn more about maybe which specific bacteria, how they influence either positively or negatively, depending what they are, and how they influence each other, and then also all the different ways that the health of our gut impacts other body systems and organs and our health in general. So it's really a big, broad topic. And it's fascinating to me anyway. And I do love that it's becoming something that more and more people are at least aware of, especially in the mental health community. With that gut-brain connection, which is a little bit what you alluded to with the trust your gut. So we have these colloquial phrases, right, that we know and use and kind of talk about, and it's absolutely talking about that connection of the gut with, like I say, so many other parts of who we are. Including our brain, but I'm trying to even think what your specific question was, and maybe it was just say more. But it just there's a lot to say. There's a lot to it, and just to kind of put out there, there's a lot different people focusing on different parts, and what I do in my program is I focus on digestion and autoimmunity, mental health, and skin health. And there are other things I could focus on, right? But that seems to be kind of the story for a lot of my clients, the overlap of those symptoms and symptoms and health issues. So that's what I focus on. Did I even answer your question?
Yes. No, I loved it. Diving in more into what you're focused on.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Emilie, can I ask, as much as you're comfortable sharing with us, how your journey into nutrition and specifically gut health started?
Sure. Yeah, I think my journey, more into, I would say holistic medicine, functional medicine, whatever term we like to use, they overlap for me. My journey into being a holistic nutritionist and practitioner started with my own health issues, like a lot of people, I feel like, in this space, where we find the conventional medical world lacking in some way. And we're looking for answers, right, somewhere. And so it's usually in some other alternative treatment modality, whatever. So yeah, I mean, I don't mind sharing. I don't know that it matters though either, but yeah, I mean, that's my journey is, I had Epstein-Barr viral infection. And so what, if there are listeners that aren't super familiar, what that looks like is like, we'll get mono, people get mono, that's the Epstein-Barr virus. And so that's the kissing disease as it's known, like a lot of teenagers will get it or young adults. And it's called that because it is so contagious and gets passed through saliva. But it's, if anyone has ever had mono, that it's just really extreme fatigue. And a lot of people have to really like take a time out. And sometimes it's pretty extreme. So I got mono in like my mid 30s. And then it just never went away. So I had, what we describe as like a chronic Epstein-Barr virus, an infection, and so similar symptoms. Like can be very debilitating, just exhausting. And there's nothing that the conventional medical world can do for it. It's a virus. And so no real treatment. It's not an antibiotic that you take. It's not. There's literally, my doctor was a good doctor, and I know that, but nothing he could do. So that was that was the like, okay, well, like, that's not a good answer. There's gotta be something we can do. And so, yeah, I mean, that's what led me kind of down the path of finding other answers and solutions and trying to get well. And along that journey, I knew I was already interested in nutrition, and one of the naturopathic doctors that I was working with, she introduced me to her alma mater, which is a natural medicine university in Portland. And they had recently opened up a nutrition program. Their holistic nutrition programs are very hard to find. And I was searching for one. There's a lot of certificate kind of programs out there, and I knew that wasn't like, not that I don't want to, like, it wasn't, I was about to say it wasn't good enough for me, because like I knew I wanted more. I wanted a deeper, larger, bigger kind of education. And so those kind of programs are hard to find. And so, anyway, like that's what led me into the master's program that I found, and getting that degree. And then the gut health, honestly, was sort of by accident. I started first couple of years in practice. I don't remember why, but I ordered like a stool test for one client. I kind of remember, realizing that I could, as I explained it to potential clients, I could get such better outcomes for my clients when I had that extra piece of information. And so as I remember, I started doing like, all right, a test with this client, and then I did one more and one more. And I just, like I said, I realized that this was just really helpful information. And 98% of what I find in that test is something that I can do something about. Like, it's within my scope of practice to treat all of those things herbally and naturally. And then also, because of my nutrition degree, I think I can help people in a unique way with their food, where other practitioners just don't have that education and don't have kind of that perspective. And I'm finding, over the years that even if other practitioners are addressing the gut, they're not addressing nutrition. And you can't heal the gut without changing your diet in some way. You just can't. So that's where I feel like nutrition and gut health like really sort of come together for me anyway. That's my
Definitely.
journey. That's how I got here. Yeah.
Thank you.
What would you say if someone's starting their journey on gut health for the very first time and don't know anything? What's like the first you would recommend for someone to start with?
I always recommend people start with a stool test. Yeah.
Is that something
always.
you could just do online, or do you have to go to a doctor for that?
You have to go to a doctor, which I'm happy about. I mean, it's a medical test, and so just like you can't order your own blood work, because the information that comes back from, say, a blood panel or a stool test or a lot of other tests, they're potentially really serious things, and you want to be working with someone who knows how to treat and take care of those things. Yeah, so I'm actually happy about that. That like someone does need to work with a practitioner.
Would it be a primary care practitioner or a
It would be
specific
Emily.
doctor? I mean, yeah. Can you order a stool test?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's part of my program. Yeah, so we start with the stool test, and regardless of where someone's at, I mean, someone might, to your question and point of like, someone might be kind of in the middle of maybe some sort of health journey, and gut health is like maybe the last thing that they think of because they've tried everything. A lot of times that is what happens. Like they've done all the other tests. Now let's look at the gut. So sometimes they're in the middle of a health journey, even if they're beginning. Like to me, it doesn't really matter. I always start with a stool test and just kind of work from there. Primary care physician, a PCP, is not, again, it's part of like the conventional medical system, and they're not trained to really be thinking about or order those tests or even know how to treat, in my experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good question. Yeah.
So interesting. And like, what maybe like just like spelling here, like what's something that could come up, I guess, on a stool test? Does it show you like how bad someone's been eating? Like if they've been eating Cheetos all week?
Yes. So there are several different labs that have I call it a comprehensive stool panel. And so what I mean by that is if anyone has had a stool test before, let's say with their PCP or from a GI doc, then they're usually looking for like one thing. So that's the difference too, is like, it's not that like no one in the conventional medical system like would be ordering a stool test, but they're looking for like one thing. And the test that I use, and there are a couple of other labs and tests that are comprehensive. So what I mean by that is like it's 5 pages of information. Wow. And so to answer your question, I mean, I'm not going to know that they're eating Cheetos all week, but I can look and see that like things are not working well, right? And let's just say like one of like the more serious things that could come back is a parasite, is an E. coli infection, is a Giardia infection, right? Like, so it's testing for those more serious kinds of what we call pathogenic type things. So pathogens are things that cause disease. And then there's all kinds of other information that give me a really good idea of just like the overall health and function of someone's gut, including how well they're digesting food, if they're reacting to gluten, do they have leaky gut, right? So it's all of these things. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, so interesting.
Yeah.
5 pages, wow.
So interesting. Yeah.
I'm like very green to all of this. I mean, I try to eat healthy, like a well-balanced diet. I know fiber is important, protein, those types of things. Mm-hmm. So when you say like a parasite or like a pathogen, in my mind, I think like if that's happening to someone, wouldn't that be so bad that they would like be in the hospital? Or no, it can be like mild enough that it's just like affecting their digestion and it just is existing for a long period of time.
Good question. Sometimes, and certain things might be so severe of like an infection that they might go to the hospital. And then there's all kinds of like varying degrees of how it's affecting someone and how it's manifesting. And so, yeah, to answer your question, like if you have any of those things, like you're not feeling well, you're right, like you're gonna feel it. Joint pain, brain fog, migraines, low energy,
Interesting.
food sensitivities. It's going to maybe potentially affect your digestion, again, depending on what it is. And yeah. And sometimes some things are going to be so severe that like you might be at an ER or an urgent clinic or something like that. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Okay. I guess I just didn't ever clock that it can affect, like I just thought, oh, it would like upset your stomach or you would have like diarrhea or like something to do with your digestive tract would be going on, but it can actually really affect your whole system, which makes sense, obviously, but I just never put that together, I guess.
Right. Yeah, no, it's a good question, and it's good, right, to hear that, because it's like bringing it, maybe the discussion around to like the 4 things I told you I work with or on, and it's that autoimmunity piece that really comes into play here too, where like some of those more serious things and or chronic are what are triggering autoimmune disease. And so even if someone has already an autoimmune disease, we're not getting rid of it, right? There is no cure for any of them. That's not what I'm saying. But if someone has an autoimmune disease and they haven't looked at their gut, connect like what's going on and how it could be optimized to help them manage it better, like that's where gut health comes in.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, I know.
Cool.
Super interesting.
Wow. Yeah. I'm a massage therapist, so I look at the body from in an anatomical place as like structure, bones and muscle and muscle function, not so much like the way that the systems work together, particularly like digestive systems and things like that.
Right.
The body is crazy fascinating for sure.
It is, right? And I'm curious too, Kat, like as a massage therapist, can you feel when someone's inflamed?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah. My brother's a massage therapist and he tells me the same. So, right. Like, and that's even already like a reason to, look at your diet, of course, but also your gut, because it's inflammation at the heart of really everything. That's what we're taught in the holistic functional medical field, whatever we're calling it. Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, I know. So yeah, I mean, you can see that or feel it, pick up on it. I would think with your clients. Yeah,
that's so cool.
What are some of your best ways to reduce inflammation?
That's a good question.
I'm not asking for myself or anything, but
asking for a friend.
Yeah, not the cheap dough eater.
Well, and maybe I'm a little biased, but I think that the diet it's just so foundational. And so again, that for me, that's where like nutrition and gut health come in, because I see them both as kind of, but both of them are foundational for me. I really believe that, and I've seen that. So yeah, I mean, if someone wants to just start working on reducing inflammation, I would take a look at what they're eating initially.
Cheetos isn't helping.
Cheetos isn't helping. That's all. That's all I'm gonna say. Yeah.
Just emotionally.
Yeah. Good, better, best. I talk about that with my clients all the time. Good, better, best. I'm not sure Cheetos even fall anywhere in that, but yeah, we could make a
not even on the food pyramid.
No, yeah, exactly.
More of an emotional pyramid with like cozy socks and blankets.
Yeah. Do you need a Cheeto?
I'm like, just ate the last one's house. I'm gonna be better now, I promise.
Cheetos are on the mind for you today.
So I have a question. You suggest a stool sample kind of to get started. I have a friend who has like a little device that she blows into that's connected to like an app, and it kind of rates like the current bacteria in her gut biome.
Yeah.
Have you seen those? Do you use those at all in your...
I've never seen them, actually. There's testing for certain H. pylori, for example, if you guys or listeners have ever heard of that. It's a pretty common bacteria, and you can test that through a breath test. And there's other breath tests for what you're describing, like knowing maybe what types of bacteria are in someone's gut. You're not going to get a super clear picture, but yeah, I'm more familiar with those, but I'm not aware of like a home kit, actually. That's interesting.
Yeah, if I find it, I'll have to like make sure to pass the information along to you. But like she like brought it, and it like measures the methane, and I'm sure it does some of like what you've been doing. And but yeah, she just like, it's a little pocket device, and like she does it in the morning and then like in the evening to kind of see where she's at. And
has she had issues in the past?
And she's like, my husband does his and they're all like clear, or like he'll have one high once in a while, but she's like, all of mine are out of whack.
Interesting. There's something called SIBO. I don't know. Have any of you heard of that? It's not super well known, but it just stands for small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, SIBO. Your friend and your story make me think that maybe she, if she's had sort of chronic gas, bloating kind of issues, SIBO is something that we test for and can treat. I guess the important thing for people who don't really know what it is like, just know that there's not meant to be bacteria in your small intestines. That's the important part.
Ooh.
So like the only way to really test for that is a breath test. But yeah, it makes me think that maybe she's had issues in the past or something. But
very interesting.
Yeah. That's why I say like gut health is it's fascinating.
I just saw a documentary where they were doing poop transplants, and you're going to be the only podcaster I get to talk to about this. So
yes,
can you tell me some poop transplants?
I was literally talking to someone about it yesterday. They're called fecal transplants. Yes.
Yes.
And it's a thing. There's even one bacterial infection that some people can get, that like where the functional medical world and the conventional medical world, like we actually agree that fecal transplants is the best way to treat for this one particular bacterial infection. So fecal transplant, for those that don't know what it is, it's exactly what it sounds like. They take the feces of a person with a healthy microbiome, and of course they're going to test it, and there's different things we look for. But so the person has a healthy microbiome, and they transplant that into the bowels of someone with an unhealthy microbiome. So it's as you might imagine, like for people who like are in a pretty bad place, like their digestive system is in a pretty bad place. It's not like first line treatment by any means. But it's a thing. And
it's so fascinating.
Yeah. So have any of you watched the documentary on Netflix?
Which one?
I know somebody that had a fecal transplant, but I haven't seen the documentary.
Okay. So Hack Your Health is the name of the documentary that came out maybe like 6 weeks ago on Netflix.
Oh, okay.
And it's about gut health. So Hack Your Health, and then something something about
Isn't
your
she the one
gut.
who was doing, she was like freeze drying poop from her partner and then her brother and then
Yeah.
putting them to capsules. And then
Yeah.
she was like, I realized I got my boyfriend's depression or something because
Yeah.
in his gut biome. It was so
Yeah.
fascinating.
Acne
Yeah.
from her brother, if I remember right, and more depressive symptoms from her partner. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
So
So
interesting.
talk about like the gut connection, like really all of the different microbes and bacteria that make up our microbiome. I mean, they literally shape.
We're just hosts for them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's fascinating. And there's a company that I'm affiliated with. I mean, it's, you have to be a doctor or specific kind of like hold a degree, have a specific kind of like health degree. But so there's a company where, I mean, yeah, think of it as like, instead of a probiotic, it's fecal transplant. So they come in capsules. So very similar to, that woman in the documentary that was doing it herself. This is a company that one of the professors in my program in school, she's one of the founders. And I mean, it's cutting edge research, honestly. And so she's part of this company. It's called Thana. And again, like you have to go through a practitioner to get the supplement. But I mean, essentially, like I say, it's a fecal transplant. And there are a couple of my clients that I really wish would try. And I don't know if it's like the ick factor that's stopping them, but I'm waiting for my, the client who's going to take me up on it, because I'm super curious how much better. I've got these handful of clients that I've been working with for years, and this kind of stuff, it just takes time to undo and to heal. And so there's a couple of them that I'm curious, if we could just kind of like get them really progressing faster and just kind of like over the hump. I'm trying to think of how to describe it better than that, but over the like hump that they kind of seem to be in, because like this stuff just it can be tricky. It can be really tricky and nuanced. So fecal transplants.
Yeah, my dad initially brought it up because my mom has had a stroke like a decade ago and has been on like antibiotics and so many medicines. And so he originally, him and I are always looking for like ways to like help and figure out. And that one he brought up to me and I was like, but the more like I like read about it, I'm like, okay, like who's gonna poop for mom?
It's I mean, like I say, it's
someone's gotta do
research. Yeah, it is. I mean,
Not
there's the ick factor, I know, but like it's for was it Kat? You said that you know someone that had a fecal transplant. So I've only met a handful. Like not many people have had them. It can really help, though. Like I say, for some of those people who are like really in a bad place.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I can't remember what started the whole thing. It was actually a young person, like they were like in their early 20s.
Sure.
And
my newest client is 23 and just got diagnosed with 3 autoimmune diseases. Yeah. Right? Yeah.
And they had tried everything, everything. And I think they had like so many rounds of antibiotics from something or whatever, but the whole biome was just like wiped out, and they couldn't eat anything. They couldn't like process anything. Yes. And the doctor finally was like, it's this or like a colostomy bag and a feeding tube. Like it was like at the end of like trying so many things. And then I think they did it 3 times. I think they had 3 fecal transplants. And like within 6 months, it was like nothing had ever happened, like right as rain.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's true. Yeah, it is. I mean, the gut, coming sort of full circle, it's just connected to so many things. And so that is the thinking, is that I would bet she has this bacterial infection that I was talking about. And again, like that's where conventional and functional medical world, like we agree, you get this type of bacterial infection after having too many antibiotics. And so this other bacteria will grow. And it's really, I'm trying to think, like, is it life-threatening? Probably, because I think you can get sepsis from it. And so really at that point, yeah, the only thing to do is just sort of start over. And yeah, the best way to do that is transplant from a healthy microbiome. Yeah. So interesting.
Yeah. Along that same line, can I ask how you feel about this trend of people that just do like these heavy, like parasite cleanses
I knew that's where you were going.
with just like taking these things to see if something comes out, or because I feel like, I mean, that would be cool if that exists, but also I just feel like that can't be great for your whole biome in general. But I could be totally wrong, and maybe it's the best thing and everyone should do it all the time. I don't know.
I knew you were going to go there because for some reason,
it's very trendy right now.
It's very trendy right now. So I get this question a lot, and I'm happy to talk about it because there's so much misinformation out there. And I'm not on TikTok. I'm not even really on social media much. Right. So there's these people who have these viral videos and talk about parasite cleanses. And there are people out there that believe we all have parasites and we all need to be doing these cleanses. And I'm not one of them. My training, my education, my experience, and, also I guess my personal like opinion and preference is to test for something like that. And frankly, I just think like if someone has a parasite, they're not feeling well, and that's not the only thing that's wrong. So getting something like the comprehensive stool test that I've been talking about, it's going to tell me all of these other things as well as if you have a parasite. And so I would much rather have all the information and just be treating in a more, I'm not sure how to describe it, but I think you understand what I mean, like treating everything versus thinking like, that a parasite cleanse is the answer, because it's not. Like if someone's not feeling well, like I say, there's more going on. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Yeah. And
do you think that some of those tests could like strip like your gut?
Say that again.
Do you think like some of those like I don't know if they're called tests or whatever, like people are doing that are trendy, is it like stripping their guts, or is it any like
cleanses?
Maybe
the cleanses.
Damage?
Yeah, so it depends on what they're using. So if someone has a parasite, there's a couple of different ways to treat, right? Like conventional doctor finds that they're going to be using pretty strong like prescriptions, and I have recommended those in the past. It depends on what parasite someone has and how severe it is and how they're feeling, etc. So sometimes a prescription's what's needed, but again, like 98% of the time, what's found in the stool test, like I can treat naturally and herbally. Most of the parasite cleanses are herbs. It's like I don't keep up. Like I don't know all the things that are talked about out there, but most of the things are natural and are herbs, but that doesn't mean they don't cause harm. It doesn't mean that there aren't contraindications with like other medications and other herbs and supplements. They're powerful. I mean, plants are powerful. It's where medicine originated, right? So yeah, depending on what someone is taking, it could cause harm to the gut, where they're meaning to like actually heal it or like cleanse it. Yeah, it depends.
Yeah. I just find it interesting. I mean, first of all, I don't like that stuff anyway, because if you're saying everybody has this one thing and you just so happen to sell the one thing that fixes it.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
But also, sure, you're going to take this pill and then not be able to leave your bathroom for 3 days. But then what? Like, all you've done is emptied your system. And I feel like with something like that, yeah, like exactly what you just said, if that's happening, like parasites happen in stages. So have you actually gotten rid of the thing, or is it just existing now and then more are going to hatch or whatever?
Right.
Or whatever
Right.
it is.
Yes. Yeah. You're not wrong. And I think it's good to be skeptical and right. Like,
I just think it's so fascinating because it is so trendy right now. And I'm just like,
it is. I don't know where it started, but it is. Yeah.
Things got really weird during COVID. Like the Facebook pages for Parasites, just like I got tagged in so many weird things.
Really? Really? Okay.
Mostly people's pictures of poop.
I mean, parasites are around us. So are, all sorts of things, bacteria, viruses, right? I mean, they're all around us in our food and water and environment. Like so in a way it's like, well, we're not getting away from it, but there, like I say, are those people, those practitioners that do believe, and I mean, they can have their beliefs, I just don't agree, but right, that like, because we are exposed to them, they're all around us, like everybody has them. And that's just not true. So, yeah.
When you talk about kind of how bacteria and viruses are kind of everywhere, could you talk a little bit about kind of the difference of having a good bacteria in your gut and like a bad bacteria and like, I don't know, just the, right?
Yeah. So great question. Part of the test that I use, there's a page of all the different kinds of good bacteria in our gut. And then there's a page of the bad bacteria. And we know in a gut, so yeah, again, like we're surrounded by all of these different things, microbes and bacteria, et cetera. And what makes up a healthy gut is, let's see, where's the camera? Like 80% good. And we know that like, we're always going to have a little bit of the other. So the ratio that we want is like 8 to 2, 80% to 20%, right? So like, that's what makes up a healthy gut. Like there is no such thing as like 0. So the way though that a healthy gut works is that because we have, let's see, that was how I did it before. Like mostly good guys, they're what keep the quote unquote bad guys at low levels. That's part of what they do. It's part of like our defense system, if you will. And so a lot of the problems that I see when I get those test results back, so if it's meant to be here, instead it's here. That's where a lot of the problem comes from. That's where, working with a gut health practitioner that like actually knows what to like look for and do and how to treat really comes into play. It's not just about getting rid of a parasite, right? So there's just all of these other pieces to it. So it's about, bringing those levels back into balance. That's part of it. 'Cause that alone causes disease. That is what is allowing not just like the bad bacteria, but all sorts of other things to come into our, when we come in contact with them, our defenses are down. And so then that just like further exacerbates the overgrowth and the disease potentially, et cetera. So hopefully that's answering your question. That's the interplay. That's the connection. That's what we know in research is the difference, I guess, between the good and the bad, right? Yeah.
Well, and that context helps explain a lot of like why a fecal transplant of that good bacteria, when there's all that bad out of the way, could be very helpful, because it's,
Yes.
you know, what's going to fight it off. So thank you
Yes.
for explaining it.
Yeah. I mean, right. We could talk for hours about all the good things and the benefits that our good bacteria do for us. So yeah, I appreciate that kind of connection from what we were talking about before, but that's exactly right. Yeah, they do.
Is there like ways that you could like feed the good bacteria while starving out the bad bacteria, or like any recommendations as sort like at least for like anyone new starting on this journey?
Yeah. And again, like it's complex and right, like always and ideally, like I start with a stool test so I know what we're dealing with, but just simply kind of getting started and thinking about improving your gut health. You've probably heard about fermented foods, like feels like a lot of people have anyway. Like that is a great way to start. So if you think to yourself, like, I don't know what fermented foods are, or I don't eat them hardly ever, like that's a great place to start. So fermented foods, what I'm talking about is kimchi and sauerkraut, miso is fermented, kombucha is fermented, tempeh, and there's a couple others that are like harder to find here in the U.S. that like are native to places like Russia. So kvass, for example, is like another fermented drink, but you don't see it very often here in the U.S.
Are pickles on there?
Yeah, good. So good. I talked about this with a potential client just earlier today. They're not. Yeah. Pickles are different. And if you think of, so what makes fermented foods different than pickles is the fermented foods have live bacteria. So they're the good kind. They're the live good bacteria. And in order to keep them kind of like, I guess, within like good levels and limits, and also like happy and healthy, they need to be refrigerated. So initially you grow the bacteria for a couple of days outside of a refrigerator, but in order to like keep them, like I say, alive and happy and healthy, those products are going to be in the refrigerator. So if you think about like pickles are shelf stable, right? Like you're buying them in the middle of the grocery store. They don't need to be refrigerated because there's no bacteria in them. So yeah, that's really the difference.
I guess. I just thought for some reason, maybe somebody told me one time, I just thought like pickles were higher in probiotics.
Yeah, not typically. Because even, I mean, I've made pickles at home. So yeah, if you've done it with, like family or like your grandma or something, typically when you can them, they're being pasteurized essentially, right? Like
gotcha. When you put them in the thing,
gotcha. when you heat, right, yeah. So yeah, you can think about that process. Like you heat them and you seal them, and then they're shelf stable. So yeah, no live bacteria. Yeah, I get that question all the time, so it's good. It's good to know the difference. So yeah, and so you think like kimchi's in the refrigerated section and sauerkraut's in the refrigerated section, miso, right? So yeah, that really is a difference. Like you're not going to have live bacteria in a shelf stable product. Yeah, good question. So sorry to answer your question, Julie. Yeah, fermented foods, like that's a great place to start for someone, is just start incorporating fermented foods into your diet. Like that's going to, it's the live bacteria. So it both feeds it. Bacteria feed on fiber. Can't remember who mentioned fiber earlier, maybe Kat. Fiber in the diet. I'm not talking about Metamucil. Fiber in the diet is what feeds the bacteria. And so again, it's like, think about, we could talk for an hour about fiber too, but like think, to yourself of like what you're eating on a daily basis. And if it doesn't include many vegetables or fruits or whole grains or nuts and seeds, or things like mushrooms and sprouts. I mean, all of those things have fiber. And if you're not eating beans, I forgot beans. If you're not eating those kinds of foods on a daily basis, likely your good bacteria are not happy and thriving. So yeah, fiber and fermented foods, like that's a great place to start.
What would you say are like some top foods or whatever that are like really gut killer?
Gut killers?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Cheetos.
Let's see. Cheetos. Yeah. Cheetos. Sugar. Sugar is going to kill bacteria. And so what I mean by that, because again, like we could have a whole other hour on like, what do I mean? You know, like what is sugar? Because it comes, carbohydrates break down into sugar. So that's why I say like it's a longer conversation because I love people to understand this. Because I know when I say sugar, you guys think of what?
I think like candy, soda.
Yeah. And so I am definitely talking about those kinds of, like, those are the gut killers. But I really want people to know that, like, we're still ingesting sugar. Broccoli's a carbohydrate and a donut is a carbohydrate. And they're very different, right? Like how, what they're made up of and how they're utilized and broken down in the body, etc. But like they both break down into sugar. They're both carbohydrates. And so, yeah, I'm talking about candy and soda and cakes and cookies and muffins and even bread. A lot of the bread out there is really not very good for us. Yeah, all of those kinds of things. Sugar literally kills the bacteria. And so again, you know, it's like, think to yourself of like, what am I eating day to day? You know, so the things that like help a gut thrive are those plants, essentially, foods that like have a lot of fiber, and the things that are killing them are really processed and overly, you know, like processed sugars and different things. So that's, yeah, in a nutshell. There's more to that conversation, but in
totally.
Nutshell, yeah, that's foods that are gut killers. Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I could totally rabbit hole down there because that just makes me think like the one, like when you wake up in the morning, when you break fast, when you have the first meal of the day, it should be like the healthiest meal, in my opinion. And we're like, here, child, have this bowl of cereal.
Absolutely.
That now costs $16 box.
Still
Yes.
for 6 hours.
Right. I mean, I'm a former public school teacher, so honestly, that's where it started. That's where it started.
Okay.
Yeah, I was a public school teacher, and yeah, I mean, I remember seeing what we were feeding our kids for lunch, and of course, I mean, you know, kids are wiggly no matter what. I don't have kids. I think, Julie, you might have shared, like, do all of you have kids?
I have 2 teenagers, and Meagan has 2 little ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, right. Like I don't have kids of my own, but yeah, I was a public school teacher for 10 years. And yeah, I mean, I know kids are wiggly, but they could be doing so much better, right? Like to your point, Kat, of, sorry, like this is another thing, but like,
no, I know.
asking them to just like,
but that's what that made me
like asking them to sit for 6-8 hours a day, and the things that we feed them both in school and out of school. I mean, we're just not doing them any favors. So yeah, that's actually where it started, was, you know, looking at what we feed them for lunch. And anyway. Yeah. So what was the original thought or question? Breakfast.
No, I was just
breakfast.
spiraling on the rabbit hole of breakfast.
Yeah, breakfast, traditional breakfast items here in the U.S. especially, terrible. Yeah, so cold cereal and soda, those are like the 2 things I would just get rid of, like in everybody's diet, to be honest. Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah, lots of sugar.
Okay, I was just going to ask, can you tell us about like where your practice is, or where people can find you if they want to work with you, and just give us that information? So
Thank you. So I practice 100% virtual, and I live in Salt Lake City, and work with people all over the country, mostly local, but people all over the country, and my degree allows me to do that, and so because I do everything virtually, it allows me just again, it's the test comes through the mail. All like supplements that I might recommend are shipped to someone's door, right? So just everything can be done from the comfort of someone's own home, and someone can find me online at Whole Essentials Nutrition. It's the name of my business. Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, website, all the things. Same name.
Can you tell us just a quick little teaser about what you're going to be covering in your 4-week course?
Oh, yes. So coming up, I have to remember this. So I'm doing a 4-part gut health series, and I don't have it in front of me, but what I remember at least outlining is we're going to do like a little bit of an overview, talking about just like why is gut health important. We're going to, again, if I remember right, talk about like inflammatory foods specifically. We're going to talk about, I believe, about like restorative foods, maybe. And then I think I'm talking about testing.
I know for sure the last one is testing.
Yeah, it's that third one I'm not super clear about, but I think
the third one is called prebiotics, probiotics, symbiotics.
That's right. Okay, thank you. All of these things obviously can be much longer conversations, but so that second one, inflammatory foods, and then the third one, probiotics, prebiotics, symbiotics. And if you're thinking, I don't know what any of those mean, that right, like that class is for you. And then a little bit of testing. So
awesome. I'm so excited.
Yes.
It's gonna be good. Yeah. Thank you again for the opportunity to talk more about it. People need to know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And as much as we're like the kind of logic and light, like we also need like a heavy portion of logic to like get us to the light as well. So I think this is such a really like important class. I'm excited for it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for that connection. I agree. Like we have to feel well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your physical body is pretty equally as important as your like ethereal body while you're on this plane of existence.
I agree. Yep, I do. Yep.
Absolutely. I have another question for you. Sorry. We don't have to be ending, but I'm just curious, do you ever like help people who have like celiac disease, or do you have any information or like thoughts on kind of that as a topic?
Yeah. So that, again, like for people who may not know, celiac is an autoimmune disease. And it's definitely, so it's both digestive and it's an autoimmune disorder. So it's like right up my alley. And I work with, honestly, lots of people with celiac. And so celiac disease. And so for people who may not know much about it, like I said, it's an autoimmune disease. What that means is it's your immune system attacking a certain organ, tissue. In this case, it's food. So it's unique in that way. But it's your immune system attacking something that it shouldn't. Anyway, like that's what's happening. And there are hundreds of autoimmune diseases. And the difference between each of them is the organ or tissue, et cetera, that they're attacking and damaging. So celiac disease means that that person can absolutely no way ever for the rest of their life have gluten. And that's the protein that's part of wheat and other like wheat grasses, so like barley, spelt, etc. And so, that's how you reduce inflammation. That's how you manage it. And the road to like getting there is that people with celiac disease or that are developing celiac, I mentioned like have a lot of digestive issues. So like they can be really severe. And we know from decades of research that it causes all kinds of damage potentially to our digestive tract and intestines, and can lead to things like someone like literally not absorbing the nutrients that we're meant to that we eat from food. So yeah, it's like I say, it can be pretty severe for some people, but usually you get someone to a place where like you know what's happening and you take gluten out, and somebody can recover and manage, right? I mean, I think I mentioned that earlier too with autoimmune disease. We're not curing, we're not reversing, but we can manage, and some can be managed really well. So that is one that I would say like we can manage it really well. But yeah, and again, like oftentimes there's other things going on if someone is developing celiac. So for example, like I have a 45-year-old client who just was diagnosed with it. He's got other stuff. Right? Like, so he was diagnosed as part like working with his, conventional doctors. And then he was still having all of these symptoms. We did a stool test. He's got a lot of stuff, like, right? It's sort of like same idea or story with like the parasite. It's like there's other reasons, right? Like why it might have developed, or like other, I mentioned like damage that it's caused that we need to know about in order to heal. So yeah, I like hopefully that answers your question as far as like how I think about it and how I know to treat and manage for people.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good
my dad has it, and I know that it, like for a minute I noticed that like it seemed to just all of a sudden everyone was like, oh, I've got this now. It's like, what can we know about that too?
Yeah, there's a genetic component, right, to autoimmune disease, but it plays such a smaller role than what most people think. It's like 10 to 20% versus the 80 to 90% of all of like the other things: diet, stress, infections that we might have gotten along the way, exposure to toxins, medication, like all, right? Mm-hmm. All the other things. Genetics play, like I say, 10 to 20% of that picture. So like, it's good to know, right? Like dad is diagnosed with celiac. Could you potentially develop it someday? Yes. Right. Yes. Right. So it's good to just sort of like know that. But yeah, it doesn't mean that you're going to get it either.
Good.
And it doesn't mean that your whole family now has celiac. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we all have to not eat wheat when he's around, but we can when he's not around, and that's the bigger part.
Yes. Yep. And I would just like pay attention to how you feel when you eat it, right? I mean, with anything though. Yeah. So, good question.
I'm like, I have so many, but I'm also like, okay, we have time.
We could talk for hours. I know that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's so interesting. I love this so much. Thank you so much for like sharing your wisdom and being here with us. I'm just so excited.
Thank you. Yeah. Again, thank you for having me. I'd love to talk about it. So I'm excited. Okay, it's Monday. Monday will be that first class. Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be a good one. And then hopefully a November event.
That's right. And you know a little bit more about that, so I'll let you talk about it. But I'm excited to be part of that too.
Yeah.
Just all I know is that you and the date. That's all I got.
It's happening. It's coming.
Yes. I love it. Perfect. Yeah, this was so wonderful, and it was so wonderful to meet you. And I love that you're sharing this, and that you're like open to sharing it into adjacent communities to like that physical medical field. And so I really appreciate that you're willing to come here, and it's just information that's going to help everyone. I know that I like also have an autoimmune disease, so it's so like cool to, you know, be able to talk to someone who has so much insight and ideas and stuff, and yeah, willing to share it
Thank you.
freely.
Yeah, thank you. You're welcome.
Thanks for joining the All podcast.
To find out more, you can find us online at academyoflogicandlight.org or on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok at Academy of Logic and Light.
If you live in the Salt Lake Valley, we'd love to see you at one of our upcoming events.
And don't forget to support our growth by joining our Patreon.
Until next time, lead with logic and light.